I am heavily interested in the Alesis 3630 itself, because prices on eBay range from 40 to 90 euros only. And I got this really cheap bargain of this compressor on eBay as well and thought myself, does this compressor really rock? How's it constructed? Which sounds work the best with this compressor, and of course which not? And I was very surprised that I didn't find a single source of information for all my questions. Hence I thought let's do such a video. Is the Alesis truly a holy grail for dirty and aggressive sound? Is it an urban legend or hoax box? Was Daft Punk really using it for the first albums and this way they've decided how? Was Daft Punk really using it for the first albums and this way they've defined how French house was sounding? Well, it is famous for not being the best compressor for any situation, nor is it a high-end compressor, and instead, when it hit the market in 1989 with an initial price tag of $100, it was targeted as a very cheap compressor. So back then, if you were not really famous and did not have enough money for expensive gear, you had to buy a cheap compressor to then just become famous like Daft Punk. I think the story or rumors well known that this is the Daft Punk compressor that made this sound famous for their initial albums Homework and Discovery. Let's start with an overview. The compressors are stereo or dual mono operation. The compressor has a stereo or dual mono operation mode, so it can serve as a two totally independent units, or both sections can be strapped together for stereo operation. In stereo, gain changes in one section are tracked by the other sections to eliminate wandering of the stereo image. It has peak or RMS response mode, so this determines whether the limiter will base its operation on signal peaks or average signal levels. Each has its uses with different types of signals. You have a hard knee or soft knee response. This means that each type of response gives a different limiting action obviously. Individual bypass switches for each channel makes it easy to compare the processed and the unprocessed sounds. It has a built-in stereo or dual mono noise gate, and this can reduce noise when compressing or limiting, and of course can make some nice chopping effects. You have the cool extensive metering, so each channel has a 12 LED display to indicate the amount of gain reduction, a second 12 LED display to show input or output levels, and a dual LED display to indicate noise gate status. You have the sidechain connections, you have a 4 dB and a -10 dB operation, and this provides signal level compatibility with nearly all studio setups. So the sidechain jack on the 3630 is a stereo jack, where the ring connection sends the 3630's control signal of the processing and the tip connection receives the processed sound. One thing to note from the manual, connect the jack into the second sidechain input when being in stereo mode, so this way you can use just one mono input from the first channel also on the second channel. Let's start at the beginning, or basically at the back. What you see here is our few connectors. Most important ones are the input and the output obviously. The compressor has two channels and each channel has a sidechain input. Now these days the sidechain is famous for the sidechain effect, but back then in the day it was used for radio moderators or DJs to duck the music signal when speaking. Another usage was to duck the signals or another instrument and the vocals sit in, but obviously this hasn't changed with the rise of French house and its ducking implemented by the bass drum. One more addition to the point that I got the bargain on eBay is that I was very surprised that I did not find a power adapter for the Alesis, because it turns out that the gear needs an AC power converter. And initially I didn't really pay attention to this detail and bought a wrong power adapter. But turns out if you look closely on eBay you find also AC power converters. However, not on Amazon or German Conrad. And by the way, you can also use a DC converter and remove the diodes, and then you have some AC signal coming through, if you are a DIY guy. Also do not expect to get the Daft Punk sound with the movement of one knob, and instead you have to learn how this compressor works, how it sounds, which material it likes and which material it does not like. You have to do a lot of experiments, and try and error will guide you to some nice results. As of now I have absolutely no clue how this compressor works inside. Means, is it an optical compressor, is it a FET compressor, is it a whatever you name it compressor? I have absolutely no clue. At the end of the 1990s and beginning of 2000s, DJs began to realize that you can as well use a kick as the sidechain signal. And as a result we have the pumping effect on the tracks in those days of more or less all house music tracks. I would say until today even. By the way, frequency depending limiting is not covered here in my video, since I believe it can be done better in software. But the idea is to insert an EQ with a bell, boost the frequency you want to get rid of, like the S for a de-esser, and then duck the signal. As a result, you have a de-esser. Alright, let's start with something everyone would do who just got a 3630, which is doing a French house track, right? So I've got this track here. Let's bypass the compressor. And then in here I have this external audio effect. My audio interface output 3 and 4 going in stereo mode into the 3630 and coming back again into my audio interface. It's almost more or less same level, but it's a little bit louder, but it doesn't really matter. So this is my initial setup, and let's start tweaking it a little bit and playing around with the 3630. What you can see is that the limiter is hitting like a brick wall limiter if you really set it to the most aggressive settings, like the ratio to infinity, the attack to like the least amount you can have, and the release also fast, and peak mode. And this way you have a limiter. And via the threshold, you can control how much limiting effect you want to have. And please don't fool yourself. Don't listen to the final gain or the final loudness of the track. Really listen to what you really hear. Yeah. Right now, I don't have any effects in between that would level or average the level again. Just listen to really what you hear. And playing with the attack and the release is where it's starting to become funny, because this really starting the pumping effect. And right now we don't have the sidechain enabled. This is really just a compressor setting. I like the setting. It's quite aggressive, but now let's do some parallel compression, and you can do so by using the dry and wet knob here on this external audio effect. Listen how the hi-hat is being affected. This is where things are becoming very complex, because you could use the 3630 not just for the stereo mode, but really using two different compressor settings, like one with fast attack and the other as well with fast attack, but the other one with slow and fast release, and therefore you can really make some very interesting mixes. But right now I'm just using it in a stereo mode. Let's do the most interesting part. Let's use the sidechaining with a kick drum. So therefore I need to do some patching. So my sidechain will come out of channel number 5. The sidechain input of channel number 1. As soon as you insert the sidechain signal, you will see that the compressor will kick in once it receives a signal into the sidechain. And this is the case here. I have a kick drum going out to external output number 5, which goes into my 3630's sidechain input. Listen to that. Let's try some parallel compression. If I bypass the 3630 and insert a loop compressor, let's see if we can match it. I want to have this side chain from the SN signal. Let's use the normal Ableton compressor. Very interesting. Okay, because we are drum and bass producers, we are most interested in 808-ish bass lines, and therefore we use any compressor we have for our 808 bass line. So listen to that. and disable it. So you learn on a plain sine 808-ish bass line you can add some certain attack, and this attack, the amplitude, you can use for further attack sound. So if you add some distortion even afterwards, post-processing, you can add some high harmonics on the that you do not have on the original signal beforehand. And with the attack setting, you can define how much attack you want to have. But now, for the sake of simplicity, I do not add now any distortion effect or so, but you get the idea, yeah. And again, don't fool yourself because of the different levels of the signals. Just listen to what you hear. What I usually do and what people do not have in mind so much, I always have some sidechain signal as well on my pads, and therefore I'm adding some kind of rhythmic effect into my drum and bass. Here's a pad. And by the way, if you don't know this track, listen to my track called Afternoon Daydream, where you get exactly the sound. And now let's add some pumping effect. And in comparison to the glue compressor, and the stock compressor, Also these days, what people are going to do is pimping the 3630 up and making it some more high-end compatible with exchanging some of its components. However, I won't do that because I'm interested in the actual characteristics of the compressor itself, and if I want to have a very specific compressor effect, let's say for some very specific task, I have my plugins, or maybe buy some hardware in the near future. But now I'm interested in your opinion. Do you think the Alesis is a bargain or just a piece of useless old gear? Do you see any further applications that they did not cover? Do you believe you can achieve similar results with other compressors, either hardware or software? Let's open the discussion and help me having a final single source of information that covers everything interested producers need to know. Talk to you soon. Bye.